Hey there, welcome back to High Infidelity, the best channel for cheating stories. Like and subscribe to channel for more spicy stories. Now, let's get into today's story video. The day I caught my fiancé cheating 2 days before our wedding. So, I've recounted this story a few times on Reddit, but I felt this subreddit would be the best way to get it out of my system. For context, I'm now 31M, but this occurred in 2014 when I was 26 and my ex-fiancé was 25. Let's call her Barb. We met in college and dated for 3 years before being engaged, with a wedding date set by the 4th year. Our parents are not well off financially and she was in graduate school, so the financial duty fell on me, which totaled $20,000 and was paid in full 4 days before the wedding. We had our standard mid-20s relationship troubles leading up to that horror of an evening, with periods of bad communication, excessive drinking on weekends, and the odd argument about minor nonsense. Aside from that, we had a terrific relationship and spent a lot of time together figuring out life after college and planned for the future. As I previously indicated, the wedding and reception. Venue processed my check 4 days before the wedding, despite the fact that the contract specified that it was non-refundable. Over 120 guests had been confirmed, including a few dozen from out of state. Tuxes and bridesmaid gowns had been measured and paid for, and everything was coming together. Now, before I continue talking, let's get to the inevitable of events that you're all interested in. The night in question was a Friday evening at our new apartment, which we'd moved into a few weeks before, and we'd invited around a dozen people over to pre-game before hitting the town's pubs. My buddy, whom I've known since kindergarten, we'll call him Ricky, was among this bunch of buddies. Barb and I had spent a lot of time with Ricky over the past 3 years, and he was undoubtedly one of her favorite of my friends, which is always great when your so gets along with individuals in your social circle. The night began at a local establishment that allowed buyout, so by the time we left, a 1/5 Jameson and a 30 rack of Ewingling had been consumed, and everyone was intoxicated. The next 3 hours were spent moving between 2-3 bars, resulting in the whole group devolving into a drunken, aggressive mess. Most everyone went home when the bars closed, save for me, Barb, Ricky, and another couple who returned to our flat for a nightcap. Once back at our residence, the pair barely stayed for about 20 minutes before calling it quits and heading home, leaving me with Barb and freaking Ricky. I spotted Barb checking her phone more than normal earlier in the night in the bar, and Ricky checking his phone after she had locked the screen. I nearly put 2 and 2 together, but why would I be concerned about them plotting anything nefarious 2 days before I was going to marry this girl? Back to my place, I was reasonably sober and observed that all of the liquor was gone, so I was thinking of picking up a couple of 6-packs from a nearby establishment that remains up until 3 a.m. Barb and Ricky were clearly on the booze and had tanked, but there was no reason to assume anything shady would happen if I left for 20 minutes. When I was in my vehicle, about to leave my apartment complex, I had a horrible sensation in my stomach that something wasn't right, which really terrified me out. So I contacted my closest friend, and he agreed to be picked up and accompany me on the beer run and back to the flat. We strolled up to the sliding glass door that led to my living room, which featured a couch to the immediate right, after getting some Bud Heavies and coming home. We opened the door, took 2 steps inside, and my ex-fiancé was fully naked and mounted on Mr. Ricky, thrusting tonsil deep into each other's throats. The remarkable thing about the circumstance was that neither of them seemed to realize that my friend and I were just 10 feet away observing their intoxicated antics. I lost it after 7-10 seconds of trying to absorb the present scenario, dropped the liquor, shoved her backward off Ricky fully, and delivered 2 powerful right punches to Ricky's eye and cheek while he was still flat on his back with the most horrified expression on his face. To put things in perspective, I am 6', 220 pounds, and have always played hockey. He is 5'6", 140 pounds and a runner. Ricky began snoring. I had never idea this was a thing. Immediately after my fist attack, and was sleeping for at least 5 minutes, while I was losing my mind over the issue. I phoned her parents around 10 times without thinking till they woke up and insisted they come take up their unfaithful daughter right now. Their home was just 5 minutes down the road, so they came in quickly after I was berating Barb for her heinous, nasty choice. Her parents rushed into me, yelling at Barb, while Ricky was snoozing on the sofa and my friend was mediating the issue. The first thing I told everyone was that the wedding was OFF. I wanted the ring back and said that I'd rather lose $20K than spend the rest of my life with it cheating. Her parents spent the next 20 minutes trying to talk me out of it, and sometimes justifying Barb's conduct, asking things like, "Why can't you forgive her?" And "Isn't it too late to cancel the wedding?" Meanwhile, Ricky awoke with the right half of his face swelled to the size of a grapefruit and his left eye closed. It was difficult to get him out of the apartment since he was too intoxicated to drive, so I contacted his brother, who was 20 minutes away, and spent the time berating Barb, Ricky, and her parents. Surprisingly, despite my wrath, I was able to keep my cool long enough to communicate my feelings. When I've been this unhappy in the past, my brain felt jumbled, and I had difficulty condensing and forming my ideas into coherent phrases. No, not this time. I had meticulously taken apart each objection, opinion, or appeal for reconsideration uttered by everyone in the room by the time Ricky's brother picked him up and Barb's parents shuttled her home. It felt fantastic. I'm not going to pretend that the months that followed were simple and that everything worked out in my favor. 2 months later, the pharmaceutical firm where I worked decided to lay off my whole division. I had piled up thousands of dollars in credit card debt to pay for the wedding. Unemployment followed me for 5 months, and I was diagnosed with major depression. Life was messed up for a few years, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But now that I'm 31 years old, things have calmed down and I couldn't be happier. Thank you for allowing me to air my grievances. Story 2. I cheated and don't know how to forgive myself. Hey, I am a 28-year-old woman who left her home country to be with my spouse. Since I relocated, I've been suffering from homesickness, which has gradually developed into melancholy. Furthermore, in the 3 years I've been here, I became pregnant twice, one of which was an unplanned accident. So now we have 2 very young infants. I lost my sister a year ago, and that was when everything began to fall apart. It was also the moment when I had just given birth to my beautiful baby. Postpartum depression was diagnosed in me. I was cured, but the sadness returned, this time more greater. My spouse is devoted to our children. In fact, it is his primary concentration. He opted to be a stay-at-home father. I work part-time to make ends meet. The problem isn't money. It's that we see one another every day but seldom converse. When we dispute, he becomes violent. He smacked me a couple times, leaving blue stains on my body. I understand that striking is unacceptable, but I always expected him to change. I also shared pictures of my injuries to my in-laws. They just erased my photos. I've never considered cheating. But I've been feeling so empty that I feel like I'm living on autopilot. My in-laws never inquired how I was, and they never saw me as a person, just as the wife of my husband. I began getting the one-to-up with someone 3 weeks ago, simply to feel anything. So I downloaded an app, spoke with someone, and did it. We made contact. After that, I blocked him and stopped communicating with him. I didn't even attempt to disguise it, and my husband found out 2 days later. He hit me so badly that I couldn't walk. He informs all of my buddies I may, and what I did was heinous. My in-laws barred me. As a result, I was left alone with a battered body and face. It was really lonely. It was my fault that I did the unthinkable. I should have done more to feel alive. I am illiterate and foolish. I told him why I did what I did over the period of 3 weeks. He is aware that I suffer from depression. Therefore, he claims he forgives me and wants to continue. He even gave me flowers a few days later to try to make things better. I admire him, but my sadness is deepening. I now wake up thinking I've done such a terrible thing, and I can't help but hate myself. I'm genuinely considering suicide. I only think about my kids now because the thought of them prevents me from doing so. I'm not sure how to go back into life. My in-laws, family, and friends are all aware of what I did. I'm afraid if they see me, they'll simply see a big failure sign on my face. How can I possibly go on living like this?